House Speaker Mike Johnson says the House of Representatives will vote on whether to expel George Santos tomorrow.
That's right. The California Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, he introduced this new resolution, I should say, to remove the New York Republican just yesterday. The House Ethics Committee said there was, quote, substantial evidence Santos repeatedly broke the law in a report earlier this month. Santos says he won't resign, but he told our Nicole Killian he expects to get the boot.
Do you think he will be expelled?
Probably. I mean, if you go based on that, do I believe it? If I believe my colleagues, and a lot of them are saying that they have the votes.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from Capitol Hill. Scott, you were speaking about doing the math just yesterday. We heard Santos there say he expects to get expelled. So then why not resign? Why go through this process?
Well, Errol, he's been pretty clear. He's not going to resign in part because he believes he's a victim. He believes he's the victim of a politicized investigation and a biased investigation. So this will proceed to this expulsion vote tomorrow. And I got to tell you, Errol, there's an awful lot of people expressing an awful lot of confidence this thing's going to pass. I talked to one New York Republican who says they are increasingly bullish on the prospects that this very high threshold of 2/3 vote needed to expel a member will be reached and surpassed. And there really is, unambiguously, a political upside for Democrats in this process. They can tether any Republican who votes to protect George Santos to George Santos, and they are also shrinking significantly the very narrow margin Republicans hold in the U.S. House. Let's hear more about that now from Republican strategist Doug High. The margin of error gets even smaller.
It does. They basically have a 5-seat majority, and if George Santos is expelled from Congress for good reasons for Republicans, that makes it just that much harder. Everything becomes 20% harder if they don't have all their ducks in a row on a vote for a rule for a bill or keeping the government open come January.
I asked Santos if he's going to twist arms, try to convince some people to vote for him tomorrow, and he says it's not a good use of his time. But to be clear, our reporting also shows Democratic leaders and Republican leaders aren't going to whip this vote either, try to galvanize support. They're going to let each member go on the floor and vote his or her conscience. But at this moment, that's a bad prospect for George Santos.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Republican leader, Santos says that he spoke with Speaker Mike Johnson. He's only been Speaker for about a month now. How is the Speaker handling this, and any more insight into that conversation and how that went?
Yeah, the new U.S. House Speaker says he's concerned that an expulsion sets a bad precedent. And there have been other Republicans who say there may be retaliation politically after any expulsion of any member, that some others may go after Democrats next. That's the argument the Speaker's making, but it's hard to avoid and hard to ignore the sensitive political nature of the Speaker's position. He's got this narrow majority. He faces the prospect of losing one, and he's got all these big votes ahead. Votes to fund the government, to fund the military, to authorize the military. There's also the emergency aid request for Ukraine and for Israel. He's got to navigate all that potentially with one fewer vote in his pocket. It's real tricky real quickly.
And a quick question on a special election in Santos's district. If he gets expelled, it triggers that. Any talk of who might replace him?
Both parties are bullish about a special election in George Santos's district. To be clear, Errol, it's one of the dwindling number of actual competitive seats remaining in America. Both parties think they could fight a good fight, an expensive fight. It's in the New York City area. That would likely happen weeks, if not months, though, if there's an expulsion.
All right. Scott MacFarlane with the latest. Thank you very much.